Most people think of the contemporary countries that emerged from the British or other European colonial empires when the subject of colonization is brought up. Although it may be the first country that springs to mind, official colonization of the US did not occur until the 17th century, making it a comparatively recent development. This raises the question though, what about colonies in earlier or perhaps older times? Don't forget to subscribe to Ancient History for fascinating insights into the mysteries of the ancient world and captivating historical narratives. The Phoenicians are one ancient group that exemplifies the concept of colonization and conquest, which has existed throughout history. As early as 2500 BC, the phallic Socratic civilization known as Phoenicia ruled over land in the Levant. The Phoenicians were composed of a number of separate city-states, including Tyre and Biblos, rather than necessarily belonging to a single nation. Despite this, they provided a united front of sorts for the Mediterranean colonization effort. The Phoenicians were not interested in acquiring additional territory or in building a greater empire, in contrast to some of the vast imperial empires that would subsequently spread around the world in their own attempts at colonization and territory expansion. Rather, they aimed to expand their network of trade. Trade had been a major factor in the success of the existing Phoenician city-states, such as Tyre, Biblos, and Sidon. Even the splendid city of Carthage, founded by the Phoenicians and later to become an unofficial empire, derived much of its income on trade. Collectively, the Phoenicians had exceptional trade skills and maritime navigation, creating immense prospects for commerce with locations as distant as the Greek islands, the African coast, and Britain. Despite the Phoenicians' expertise and experience, trading this far and so often wasn't always simple. At first, the plan was just to set up a number of way stations and trading posts to facilitate the merchants' travels and increase their efficiency. The Phoenicians soon realized, however, that converting these posts into more permanent institutions or even communities may prove to be of great advantage to the itinerant traders. The Phoenicians would primarily control the market in such areas and use permanent settlements as an additional venue to sell their goods. Eventually, when this plan came to pass, these settlements all came under the control of the mercantile superpower Phoenicia, despite the fact that the goal wasn't truly territorial gain. It's generally accepted that this colonization, intentional or not, did occur, although it's unclear precisely when it transpired. According to many contemporary historians, the practice started in the 8th century BC, at the same time as the Greeks started establishing their own colonies. However, this runs counter to the assertions of antiquated experts who assert that the Phoenicians had started to found their colonies as early as the 12th century BC. While some researchers contend that none of these dates is precise, the unofficial establishment of the early towns and outposts makes it difficult to determine the precise chronology. Therefore, it is generally accepted that the 12th to the 8th century BC corresponds to pre-colonial trade and the construction of way stations, trading posts, and small settlements. The 8th to the 6th century BC corresponds to the period that followed, which laid the groundwork for Phoenicia's Mediterranean colonies as the Phoenicians' trading dominance and prosperity increased. Because it was all the way in Spain, one of the early Phoenicians' colonies actually showed how well the system functioned to enhance their trading possibilities. Cadiz, one of the first Phoenician possessions abroad, was actually only one of the Spanish colonies, and this was all on one peninsula. Adra, Amuñacar, Cortea, Ibiza, and Malaga would all grow to be significant Phoenician colonies and trading hubs. The Phoenicians had originally planned to colonize Ortygia in Sicily, but the Greeks swiftly pushed them to rethink their strategy, and they ended up holding on to Motia, Palermo, and Solunto. The Phoenicians conquered Tharos, Sulcis, and cities in Sardinia, such as Nora and Cagliari. Some of the first Phoenician settlements, including the city of Larnaca, was also located in Cyprus. The Phoenicians established colonies like those in Annaba and Algiers, not too far away in Algeria. In the meantime, Phoenician rule was extended to Larache, Tangier, Asala, Rabat, and Asila in Morocco. Phoenicians and their traders also settled in Tunisia, especially in Utica, Deserta, Susa, Phapsus, and Chala. The most well-known Phoenician city in this area was Carthage, a magnificent new town that would soon establish its own de facto empire. Leptis, Sabratha, and Tripoli in Libya became Phoenician colonies, even though it would seem like a lot for a group that wasn't even a completely functional nation-state. Each of these colonies had a different degree of ties to the Phoenician city-states that had colonized them. It's critical to remember that the establishment of these colonies was motivated by the need for a more extensive and dependable trading network throughout the Mediterranean. Certain colonies, like those in North Africa, appear to have incorporated elements of Phoenician religion, culture, architecture, and other elements, while other colonies preserved more of their native traditions. Their location in relation to the Phoenician city-states played a role, but each colony's ability to maintain its pre-existing culture and associated characteristics also played a role. All of these colonies, however, functioned as extra hubs for trade and as factories producing Phoenician commodities, like the well-known purple-dyed fabric. This meant that more commodities could be created and exported from a multitude of locales ranging across the shores of Europe and Africa, in addition to enabling the merchants from the homeland to bring more items from Phoenician city-states. Even though the original purpose of this commercial venture was to trade, it didn't take them long to discover that having so much land and widely dispersed colonies had advantages beyond the trade market. They started fighting with the people in their colonies throughout time as they tried to keep growing. In order to achieve these new goals, the Phoenicians as a whole militarized themselves, as fortifications started to appear. However, as numerous other ancient societies and empires discovered the hard way, the Phoenicians quickly came to understand that their goals were unattainable, as neighboring nations, ranging from the Greeks to the Assyrians, all endeavored to extend their own dominance and influence. All around, the Phoenicians were outmatched, and by the time Alexander the Great raised his blade in front of the Carthaginian king, Phoenicia's might had run its course. The Mediterranean in particular was undoubtedly inspired by the vast city-states that were once mighty fortresses, despite their fall from grace and partial overshadowing by the great Carthaginians, who owed their victorious existence to the Phoenicians. The development of the first way stations and trade posts, which would soon become towns and colonies, made the mission of spreading products, religion, art, and culture over the coast of Europe and Africa considerably easier for the merchants alone. Moreover, the connections and trade network that the Phoenicians had established persisted long after they ceased to be the dominant trading force and power in the Mediterranean. For several centuries, the Phoenicians governed this network and prospered as exceptional navigators and traders. The Phoenicians colonized a large portion of the Mediterranean, even though their primary objective was not colonization per se. Their preference for trade was not necessarily a bad one. That's all for this video. We will be back soon with another informative video. Don't forget to like and share this video. To keep exploring ancient history together, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Until next time!